Yo, what's good, y'all? Welcome this week's episode of Talks with TVBOO. Welcome this week's episode of the podcast. Hope you're all having a great week, and I appreciate y'all being back, man. I do. It's been a while. It's been about 3 months since I've had a podcast, and I've missed it. I missed it every day, but, man, I had to take some time and do some self-reflection and some growing and just waiting until I felt like myself again. And I'm feeling a little bit more like me a little bit every day, and I just appreciate everybody being back here. My guest this week is a fucking awesome person, dude. This was a fantastic conversation. Very eye-opening, very educational, and also fun conversation. My guest today is a representative from one of the biggest LGBTQ nonprofit organizations here in Denver. They do a lot of great work for the community and really helping people out in need. And just learned a lot about them today and all the great work that they do. And I'm going to give a base donation to this organization, and anything that you guys donate, I'm going to match. So if you want to look in the description, I'm going to link their website in the description, and you can follow that and donate if you'd like. And if you send me a screenshot via Twitter, in my DMs, or my email, I will send you back a screenshot of me matching that donation so we can help raise money for them to do a lot of good out here in this community. But I'm going to let this episode get into it. Cannot thank this guest enough for being here today. You know, they came in here with open arms, and I came in here with an open mind, dude, and it was a fantastic conversation. So I'm going to let it get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Viet from LGBTQ, Colorado. Come here, girl, 'cause that is back. Let me take my tongue and go back your direction. I met a girl and her booty tastes like strawberries. I swear to God, this could be the one that I marry. Hey, hey, and she's so different. I made that from behind. I met a girl and her booty tastes like strawberries. Hell yeah. What up, Viet?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Straight off from the back, I appreciate you being here today. Taking time out of your day to come and talk to me. I got some things I got to learn, and I hope we can get some of that done today. Before we even do that, I just want to say cheers.
Cheers.
That's how we do it. That's how I like to start it.
Yeah.
So, just to kind of get like a base, can you tell the listeners who you are and, the company that you represent?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Viet. I use she, they pronouns. Identify as a non-binary individual, and I work at the center on Colfax, and I'm the manager of young adult programs there. I was hired on about a year ago now to develop a young adult program. So the young adult program serves like 18 to 24-year-olds. And the program is kind of like four stages in a sense, 4 pillars where we teach about like professional development, life skills and whatnot, and where people can create friendships and close community members and have the self-independence and like learn how to be an adult, but also be able to lean on each other, and also how to bounce back from adversity when they face it. And so that's kind of what the program is. It's only a year old, and it's had to morph a lot from what it has started with, because I start with the vision, and, the vision doesn't meet what I expected to, and you have to be flexible and just morph it to what the people need. So, yeah.
What are some of the, you've been doing it for a year. You said you're having to morph. What's been like the biggest morphing, you say, in that year that it's been a program?
Morphing. Excuse me.
It'll do that, man.
A lot of the biggest morphing wise, I come from Texas Tech University, as we just discussed before the podcast.
Yeah, bad football team.
A basketball team now.
Yeah, we're a basketball team. Yeah. But yeah, I was the president of the LGBT organization there. And when I was hired onto this, and I was like, it's going to be like that, where, people come in on a weekly basis and, they just chill out, learn about things, learn about the LGBTQ community, learn cultural competency from each other, have those difficult discussions, and just build upon that. And, that was my expectations, because I was like, sweet, this is going to be a piece of cake.
Yeah.
That's not very true, because I was in a college setting, and the setting I'm in now, it's not that whatsoever. It's we serve a demographic of 18 to 24, but it's a wide range of people. We have like unhoused program members. We have program members that are just seeking friendships, and some program members who absolutely need help with like job seeking, professional development, the resume critiquing, and like cover letter drafting. And then we have individuals who are like, very well off on the richer end, and they're just seeking community. So it's a very wide range, and I like to say that there are multiple pinpoints to seek out the specific need to meet that need, and the pinpoint constantly shifts and moves. So I guess the biggest hurdle I've had to overcome is like just being flexible and understanding what my program members need, and kind of like managing the program to fit that. And so it's not just like, oh, it's one day people just come in and meet, chill out, hang out, whatever. It's that, but also some people work because they're full-time workers and can't attend our Tuesday drop-ins. So it's finding other days where we incorporate engagement so they can create friendships, and also, fits their schedule too. So it's not just one day, it's multiple days that we can do things together.
Yeah.
So
how different is that going from like, working in this field in Texas and then coming to Colorado?
Oh gosh. So I did a lot of LGBT work in Texas, on a university sense, but also in a citywide sense. I was in Lubbock, Texas. I want to say it was, I spent the last 8 years there, and I tell a lot of people that was a penance for me, because it was very hard. And doing LGBT work in Texas is very meaningful until it really just burns you out, because there's like almost little to no movement of like upward mobility. So it's very hard to see any kind of progress when our environment, but also our political landscape, is constantly just like beating down on you, So meaningful work, but I got burnt out really fast.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, being a bit of like a culture shock too.
Oh, yeah.
I had experienced that whenever, I was working at the gay bar in Jackson, Mississippi, and it was just like, that was just like the spot. That was like the only spot for everyone to go. And then I moved from there. We would have like people protesting outside on Saturdays, and then I go from like there to New Orleans, which was like I moved there the week of Decadence Festival, which is like the Pride weekend. So it went from like a very like just one spot in Jackson to like a very gay city. And like when I saw it like in like a week, and I was like, yo, this is wild. It's very different.
Yeah. So I have some program members who live in Colorado Springs, and they can't make it every week to our Tuesday drop-in. So it's like very sporadic when they can join us. But they would often tell me that like, there's very little resources here, very little like community spaces here that we can join, celebrate, and be around each other. And it's mostly just the clubbing scene there.
In Colorado Springs.
Gotcha. Springs. So I can't really speak to their experience. But for me, from Lubbock, Texas, we had like 2, at most like 3 gay bars. I want to say it's just 2. And like other than P-Flag, which has, I don't know, I think it didn't survive through the pandemic.
Is that a club?
No, P-Flag is a nonprofit organization that has different chapters in cities. So it's mostly a resource organization for like parents. The acronym for P-Flag is Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, but we don't use that acronym anymore because lesbians and gays is not really encompassing of the entire LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
But we have like little organizations here and there, but the clubbing scene is where a lot of queer people go in Lubbock, Texas, to like just hang out, to be with each other. So it's very little resources there. So I'm comparing its similarity to what Colorado Springs is. But it is definitely a culture shock moving from Lubbock to Denver, because here in Denver, it feels like a little hub of just affirmation and like positivity of embodying queerness. But outside of it, I feel it's like a little not as embodying, you know?
Yeah. I know, like, Sunday they had, like, drag wrestling going on downtown. I saw it on my buddy's store, and I was like, yo, that looks wild, man. That looks like fun.
That's really awesome. I'm very much an introvert, so I don't go out a lot.
Yeah.
And so there's tons of LGBT and queer stuff happening that, like, I have not really experienced yet. But, yeah.
Drag wrestling.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know either, but it sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
It does sound like a good time. How much has just the program that you're working on grown within just the year?
Grown within just the year. It was built from nothing, and I was hired on to build it from absolutely nothing. So I did a lot of research and whatnot. But it launched in January, and since then we have gained, I want to say, like a regular 15 in-person members, but we also communicate on Discord, which has reached about like 40-ish members. And we have like online communities too through our Discord server. But it's mostly individuals reaching out to me for like professional development help, job seeking help, and just like, hey, like, can you help me get this job? What are some interview tips that I can take into my interview? Mostly that. But we are making a trip to Meow Wolf tomorrow, actually. So we do those kind of things too. So it's like an educational piece during Tuesday drop-in, but also a fun engagement piece of going
like a
to
field
Meow
trip.
Wolf.
Yeah.
Like a field trip.
Why not?
Yeah, it's grown quite a bit, I want to say, and sometimes it does make me a little sad to hear about where some of my members are coming from. I've mentioned that some of them are unhoused, and there's every bit of progress that they share with me. It's like celebrated amongst me and the staff members at the center. Whenever somebody gains employment, I tell my staff members, like my coworkers, that, hey, one of our members gained employment, or one of our members are on their way of gaining housing now. And it's like, it's a big deal, even though it's just one person or two people. So
yeah, I know. I learned that like the trans community is like one of the most like the percentage of those type of people being unhoused at some point is really high. I was talking to the VP of this nonprofit in Chicago. I think it's like Life Color, or if I might be wrong on the name. I could pull up my phone. I was talking to him like 3 weeks ago, but the percentage that trans people were unhoused or had trouble getting employment, like that number shocked me.
Yeah, it is. That percentage is very much up there. I don't have the mechanism to fact check it, but
Kyle does.
a lot of our transgender members, they face a lot of difficulties just even within Denver, of like being hired on as a openly trans person. And sometimes people when they are currently employed, sometimes they face a lot of barriers coming out at work. But also, I want to say it was 2021 that we had the most trans murders and hate crimes in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's up there. The most marginalized individuals is the Black trans woman, and it's very hard to grasp how. I don't really know how to explain that. Grasp how to support a community with so many. I don't know how to say it. It's like when you want to save the world, and
good intentions.
There's so much to saving the world.
I'm trying to think of the word too, like valor, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, that does suck. I mean, you were talking about the struggles that, I mean, that's wild that even out here in Colorado, I feel like it's a very progressive city, that they have a hard time finding jobs.
Yeah.
But it's, I know that you work within, is the Saga program, right? Isn't that what it's called? Yeah, the Saga program is just on a certain age gap. Now, the company in a whole, like, is there things that they are obviously they're advocating, but what are some of the things that they're doing to help, change that narrative and to help, employ some of these folks?
To help employ some of these folks, it's mostly just supporting them where they need to. I know that my coworkers, we have a transgender program, which is mostly made up of affinity spaces. So people who identify as trans femme or trans masc or as trans women or trans men.
Can I pause you? I don't mean to interrupt. Can you explain? I know, like a trans woman, trans man. What is trans femme and trans masc? I don't know that one.
So gender is seen as a spectrum.
Yeah.
And so on the ends of the spectrum is like female presenting and male presenting. And in between is I want to say is like non-binary in a sense. And it fluctuates where trans masc is like some people identify as non-binary, but they're more masculine presenting. And some people do identify also as non-binary, but they're more feminine presenting. So that's what I mean by trans masc and trans femme. So when we talk about trans men, it's individuals who identify as transgender, but identify as a man, and vice versa.
Got you.
Yeah.
So like, with the trans masc and trans femme, I remember back in the, not want to say back in the day, but like Metrosexual was like popping off for a bit. Would that fall like in that category of like trans masc and trans femme? Like, do you have to be trans to be like trans masc or trans femme, or is it just more of like leaning towards that personality or like, just like that swagger a little bit more?
I don't really understand what the term metrosexual is.
I think so. Like, I remember like South Park did a thing on it where it's like all the dads in town were dressing up.
So it's straight men with, straight men with feminine or gay energy.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's very hard to say because I don't fully know what metrosexual like entails, but also the cultural ideologies surrounding metrosexual. But that could be very, I want to say a little judgmental, a little oppressive for like straight men who do want to be feminine presenting, because who they're attracted to is still, heterosexual. But gender presentation can just be what they want to embody, present as, because it's very hard to say because it's not from my own experience.
Got you. I didn't know if that would fall under the category of like trans masc or trans femme, like if you had to be like trans or non-binary to fit like in that category.
Yeah. So from what I'm seeing here, so from what I understand, since they're not trans, they would not fall under that category.
Okay,
since they're just, men
Right.
with,
Yeah, I didn't know. That's,
I think the term metrosexual is very based in assumptions, and we don't want to make assumptions on who they're attracted to or how they identify, because that can be very oppressive to the transgender community. The term transgender just means, and it goes beyond what simple terms can describe. It's just who identifies away from their biological sex. So for example, I identify as a non-binary individual, and my biological sex is female, but I don't really identify as female, so I'm non-binary. And the term non-binary is under the trans umbrella, but there can be nuances in where people identify as well. It's a big umbrella.
Got you. And if this question comes off ignorant, I'm just curious,
Right.
What when did you find out? Like, how did you know you were non-binary? Like, when was that moment? Like,
well, I first came out as bisexual. I want to say like my first year of college, and that was like that's when my egg cracked in a way, where it's like that realization of like, oh, I'm not a straight individual.
Like, I kind of like the puss.
Well, my attraction is still very much on the bisexual, pansexual spectrum.
Yeah.
In a sense.
That's why I said kind of.
But I don't know. When I started identifying openly as non-binary or genderqueer is, I want to say within 5 years ago. I've always just felt not fully a female person or fully a woman. And, you know, after I've started presenting more masculine in this way, a lot of people don't see me as like a woman either. Sometimes in public, people mistake me for a man, and sometimes people don't know how to identify me, and they're like, "Oh, sir, ma'am, sorry."
How does that make you feel when that happens?
Sometimes it's kind of euphoric because I like to be ambiguous to individuals in the public where people can't tell my gender.
Gotcha.
So it's hard to identify if I'm a woman or a man. That is a little euphoric to me, but to some other people, it might be different.
I know I've, you know, like I was raised to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir.
Right.
And when I moved out here, there was times like I didn't know. So I was just like, yes, daddy.
Yes, daddy.
Who knew that daddy was gender fluid? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's worked.
You know, I don't know. It's very... I'm still trying to find my footing here in Denver. And, you know, coming from Texas about a year ago, I'm still in the learning process of what is okay and what is not okay. Because some of the language I've used in Texas turns out to not be okay at all in Denver, which is a more progressive area.
Yeah. I feel like that changes over time too. You know what I mean? Like and at times it gets hard to keep up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It definitely also depends on who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Because when I still lived in Lubbock, Texas, I was surrounded by people who were not fully progressive, who were not fully knowledgeable about LGBT acceptance and like being affirming to the community. So afterwards, when I started my job here, and I'm surrounded by coworkers who know how to be affirming of every single individual, what the correct terminology is, what is okay to say and what is not okay. And I slowly learned. So like, it's a continuous process to be like embodying of the communities or marginalized communities as a whole.
What are some of the ways to do a good job of affirming? Is that literally just using like correct pronouns and, you know, because you were just saying, you know, being around those people helped you understand how to affirm. Like how could somebody help somebody feel comfortable about who they are?
Never assume their gender for the most part. I think this list can go on forever sometimes.
Yeah.
Never assuming their gender, never assuming their pronouns. Never really assuming that people know a certain thing or don't know a certain thing. It's very ambiguous. I don't fully know sometimes. And sometimes it's just trying your best. But the baseline is like, don't assume somebody's gender. Don't assume somebody's pronouns. Don't be racist. Don't be sexist, transphobic, homophobic, or fatphobic. But yeah.
Don't be skinny phobic.
I think that's hard to do now because like, you know, that's skinny phobic.
I've never even heard that term.
Me neither. I think a lot of people just, I don't know, assume that being fit and healthy is accessible and is something that everybody can do when it's not. Because some individuals have physical disabilities that prevent them from, you know, exercising. Or some people have a lack of access to healthy food. You know, I'm like an amateur bodybuilder, and I understand.
You're looking strong.
Thank you. And I understand the benefits of being vegan, but for me to be vegan, I can't do that because I can't really afford it. Because being vegan in a healthy way is very hard.
Yeah.
So
I agree with what you're saying, but I will say I think that most people could, if they wanted to be healthy, they could do it. I think it's just a mindset. It's definitely a dedication. You know what I mean? And I feel like most people could, though.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Money's a thing. Definitely the people with like certain physical attributes, would be, who can't go and do a run.
Right.
I get that. But
there's a lot of factors that
Mm-hmm.
can prevent somebody from being physically fit.
Yeah.
Or mentally healthy, or lack of access to mental health care, or a lack of access to a gym and weights, or just being physically disabled, or having a mental illness. Because when I am in the depths of a depression episode, I can't do anything, even though that I see myself as like, a very determined person to be healthy.
Yeah.
It's very hard when you're facing and challenging mental health issues.
No, I get that. On the flip side, I know whenever like I'm down and just feeling it, going and playing some basketball or just like getting a nice sweat, it makes like the world of difference for me. It's different for everybody, but I think something that could be good is to like definitely promote a healthy lifestyle, but also at the same time, like you said, there's different attributes and scenarios.
With the program that I run at the center, I know that some of my members are unhoused, but they also want to be healthy as they can be.
Yeah.
And so I try to bring in people and to talk about how to be healthy on a budget, or how to be healthy within your capacity of abilities. And that can be a very tricky conversation to have, because you don't want to assume the challenges that people are facing.
Yep.
And so,
no, I get that too. I think. Oh yeah. If you're unhoused, I could see that, like, you don't know when that next meal's coming or what you're going to be eating. So like that definitely makes a lot of sense.
And sometimes when people are working full time, and by the time they get home, they're just like, oh, I don't want to do anything. I just want to crash.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get my old lady. You know what I mean? She wants to do it, but she works that full time blue collar job, works a bunch, heavy lifting, and she gets home, she just wants to chill. So I totally get that.
Yeah, it's hard to tackle, and you just gotta find your groove and how to maneuver around your schedule and like the things that are barriers to you.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you did find out, and you started identifying as non-binary, were there any type of different difficulties that you didn't face prior to identifying as non-binary compared to whenever you started identifying as such? Were there any type of different difficulties?
Yeah, of course. So I use she, they pronouns.
Yeah.
And, I try not to be, I think a lot of people assume that I'm like a mask lesbian, which I don't like being identified as a mask lesbian. So a lot of people who know that my pronouns are she, they often use she instead. That's something that I do face as a non-binary person. Now I can't really speak for all non-binary individuals, because everybody has their own challenges that they face and how they present.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one thing that I've noticed since I've came out as non-binary. Now, I'm not really out to my parents as non-binary though, because they are first-generation immigrants from Vietnam. And sometimes I face the difficulty of like, would they really understand the concept of gender for me to come out as non-binary to them? Now my sister, she actually understands, and it's very good for me to know that my sister knows that I'm non-binary. So I tackle with that issue too, where my parents don't know that and they just see that I'm a lesbian. So
you think you'll ever tell them?
I'm not sure. I've been on the verge of like wanting to tell them, but then I backtrack myself. 'Cause I don't want to say I've always had a difficult relationship with them, but our relationship is sometimes rocky. 'Cause when I got into college, they had very high expectations, as Vietnamese parents who immigrated to the United States. they had high expectations where they expected me to be an engineer and like laid out every single course every semester, even though I had an advisor, and also like coursework already laid out. They were like, you got to take double of these classes and like stack these classes so you graduate earlier and whatnot. So that was that's a little look into the difficulties I have with my parents.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'll ever tell them.
Did you want to be an engineer? Or was that
No.
was just their idea?
That was their idea.
Yeah.
I never wanted to be an engineer. Actually, when I secretively dropped out of being an engineer, and they actually financially cut me off.
Oh.
Yeah.
How'd they find out?
I forget. It was quite traumatic for me because I did it secretively, and I knew that they would be so mad. I just knew that they would be so mad. So the point when I told them that like I dropped out of being an engineer and I'm now studying human development family studies, they flipped and, they taunted me with like, we're going to go take your car. We're going to not support you anymore and whatnot. So I was like, all right.
Take my car, but you can't take my integrity.
Well, they didn't take my car.
Okay.
It was just threats.
Yeah, right.
That's the thing. It was just threats. But that was such a big moment of betrayal for me that I was like, I don't want to talk to y'all anymore. So it was about like 2 to 3 years where I didn't have any contact with my parents. And when they finally came around, I think they were trying a lot to come around and be like, look, we're LGBT affirming now. And it's like, you can follow your dreams or whatever, spread your wings, do what you need to. But I was still like holding a grudge, of like, how you were my parents. How could you do that to me? And so it was hard.
Yeah.
But they finally came around and we're okay now. So
are they okay with what you're doing now, or like they just accepted it at this point?
I think they've just accepted it at this point. When I was doing LGBT work and back in Lubbock, it was not paid. It was all like passion work. Not saying that what I'm doing now is not passion work, but it was passion work that was not paid. And they've mentioned to me that like, this is not going to go anywhere. You're not going to make a living. And, I fought back. I rebelled a lot. And when I entered the nonprofit world here in Denver, and I told them that like, engineering didn't really get me anywhere. It's really my experiences doing LGBT work in Lubbock that got me here. And they were like, yeah, they accepted it.
Nice.
So,
progress.
Yeah.
Progress.
It's baby steps, being immigrants from the Vietnam War is probably a lot of hard work on my parents' side. And I don't really know that. I don't really fully know that because they don't really talk about their feelings or their traumatic experiences. My sister and I would talk to each other and be like, oh yeah, our dad shared this traumatic event that happened. And I'm like, oh, that is really fucked up actually.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine. Now, I was dating this Vietnamese gal back in Mississippi for a while.
Yeah.
And she was also first generation. Her parents came over, and they were hard.
Yeah.
Like, hard, dude. I was trying to learn some Vietnamese to try to impress them. They're like, she was like, please do not do that.
And I'm glad that my partner doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Or none of my past partners do that. But yeah, my parents would tell us a lot that, we came over here to a new country so y'all could have a better life and whatnot. So you need to be lawyers, doctors, like something that makes a lot of money. And I'm just like, that's not who I am. So,
and you might even be making a bigger difference doing what you're doing now than being like a lawyer or a doctor.
yeah.
Helping a lot of people.
Yeah. There was a moment where I was contemplating, like, should I go to law school? I was in Texas Tech's Student Government Association, and that really fueled a lot of the contemplations of going to law school. But I'm glad I didn't, because LGBT work and nonprofit work is mostly where I belong. And a lot of people in the nonprofit world, they're doing it because it's a passion, not for money. And, it's very meaningful work until you get really burnt out.
Is it fun? Are you having fun doing what you're doing?
Gosh, sometimes it's very hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very heartbreaking, but it is often very fun to see my program members just being happy within the space, at the center, or when we take field trips where they originally can't afford it. It's very meaningful to see that. And that's really one of the reasons why I do this kind of work.
Hell yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. I have there's a lot of parallel there to me in the music industry, right? Be very stressful, be very hard, but as soon as you get on stage and see people smiling and dancing, it's like this is why we do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I listened to some of your music. Pretty badass.
Which one was your favorite? Be honest with me.
I don't know. I just put it on Spotify and just let it go. Okay. I liked most of it.
Hell yeah, I appreciate that. You into dance music at all?
I don't really dance. I think this is like a restriction of mine where I don't feel comfortable dancing. But I like to headbang though.
Oh, dude, you'd fit right in. Oh my God, I just got back from Lost Lands and majority of the crowd's not dancing. They're just fucking headbanging.
Yeah.
Because it's so, that dubstep can get heavy. Are you a punk rock?
So I didn't grow up with music. So I'm exploring music now.
Ooh, I can turn you on some good shit.
I've been into a lot of punk bands here. I'm gonna give a shout out to Ipecac. They just released their first EP.
What a great name.
Yeah.
Ipecac.
Ipecac is pretty awesome. So within my organization, we have some signature events, and one of the signature events is organizing the Femme Underground. The Femme Underground concert is during Women's History Month, and we pull in bands that are female lead singers, and we do it as a benefits concert to an organization that supports survivors of violence. So that's where really opened my door to listening to punk music and punk rock music, actually. And Plasma Canvas, we had Plasma Canvas and Ipecac and Suspended.
These are some of the coolest band names I've ever heard.
Yeah.
No kidding. I'm like, let me look
These
them up.
bands sound metal as shit, dude.
They're pretty awesome. Ipecac and Plasma Canvas are local here in Denver, and Suspended is from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
That's where Kyle's from. Yeah, that's where he lives for a while.
Close, nearby.
Yeah, there you go.
Suspended is actually an all-female indigenous metal band, actually.
Whoa.
So it was pretty badass.
It sounds metal.
They are.
Yeah. That's fucking kick ass. Yeah, I know you're saying I don't dance, I like to headbang. Have you been in front of have you experienced a dance music crowd or just kind of just put yourself in that world ever?
Not really.
I gotta have you out to a show.
Yeah, I'm down.
I gotta have you out to a show just so you can experience it. I promise I'll show you a good time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Yeah. Bring your partner, it'll be great.
Well, she's a whole nerd. When she listens to this, she's gonna know that I call her a nerd.
Yeah.
She's not into screamo or metal or punk music. When it gets screamy, she's it's a little turned off by it.
She don't have to worry about that at my show. I promise she ain't got to worry about that at my show.
She's down for an experience, that's for sure.
Hell yeah, dude. I think I'm a little nerdy too. I might not look like it, dude, but behind closed doors,
yeah,
pretty damn nerdy.
Well, she's a aerospace engineer.
Okay, I'm not that nerdy.
Well, not just that. She's into D&D, and she's also a rising author too, who they are actually releasing or publishing their next book, Glass Cannon, in spring of 2024.
Glass Cannon would be a great band name too.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I've mentioned that you should make a little playlist in respect for your book. So, because when she wrote that book, she was listening to music that influenced the story or characters and whatnot, or the setting of the book. So.
Music's powerful like that.
Yeah, I've realized that growing up without music, it was a little weird to now start listening to it, because every time somebody brings up, hey, do you know who this person is or that person? I'm just no clue.
Mm.
So
I'll have to have y'all out for a show.
Yeah, Yeah.
that'd be cool. But going back to the main topic here.
Yeah.
You were talking about getting into the nonprofit world. Okay, now, for this episode, I'm gonna match whatever the fan base donates. I'm gonna match that. And I'm just curious, like, where does that money go? Like, what are y'all doing with the money that comes in?
The money that comes in, like donations wise, that I probably can't fully answer to that because I don't work in the finance world of our organization. But most of it goes to programmatic work. It goes back into the community. For the most part, that's what I know. It either goes to getting us paid as staff members at the center so we can deliver the program to the community itself. So it definitely gets funneled back into the community one way or another.
Y'all have a good, like, y'all doing all right? Like, everything, y'all get them donations?
I believe so. I'm not fully aware of,
finances and stuff.
But we get paid as staff members, and we do pretty good work at the center. I know that my program is specifically grant funded through United Healthcare, and so I try to funnel most of that money back into benefiting the members, like educational wise or community building wise, or going on like field trips, going to Meow Wolf, the aquarium, the zoo. It's very meaningful for them.
Yeah, I'm sure. Just being around other people like you that accept you for who you are and just enjoying the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else could you want?
I don't know. Trans rights.
There we go. That's the best. Yeah, that's a great answer. Also a great segue.
Yeah.
Going into trans rights, I as you saw, I was attacked. Not attacked. I'll say called out.
Right.
And checked for having some transphobic comments, right? And I'm just gonna go ahead and say I'm not transphobic or anything like that. I ain't got no hate for nobody. But what have been, being in Colorado, obviously it varies from state to state, right? What are the biggest struggles you think for trans people and to get trans rights? I know that's a big question.
I think it depends on state to state, but I also identify as non-binary, so I can't really say for individuals who identify as trans women or trans men or who go through the HRT process, because I'm not on HRT.
What is that?
Hormone replacement therapy.
That's what it is. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can't really speak to the experiences of individuals who face different barriers than I do, because I simply just identify as non-binary. I don't go through any kind of medical process. I don't have to take a shot in my leg or my belly on a weekly. I don't know the process. I don't do that. Or any surgical procedures. But from state to state, it really depends on how, for example, Texas or Florida is really raining down on marginalized individuals. And I want to say that Florida and Texas are or have been in the process of restricting HRT to the trans community and restricting HRT to trans youth. And that can be a very big mental health crisis. And actually, the center is seeing an increase in individuals moving from southern states or conservative states to Denver to escape those barriers, to escape trans hate, to escape homophobia. And it's a lot. And so my answer is very restricted to just my own experiences.
Okay, well then what would you like to see changed?
Well, what would I like to see changed? Well, trans individuals having the rights that they need, trans individuals having access to healthcare, mental health care, and also, low SES or unhoused trans individuals having access to healthcare to begin the process of feeling affirmed in their own body. And I know that we've talked a little bit about trans athletes before this, where trans athletes can participate in the sports that they want to. And that's a very difficult, that's a very difficult topic to dive
And we
into.
don't have to open that one up. You know what I mean? Because I'm not educated on the fact.
Right.
And I've learned that. That's for damn sure.
I think it's very meaningful to really acknowledge that, you know, we don't know everything, and there's certain topics that we can't really speak on because there's a lack of knowledge there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what I can say at a minimum is that trans athletes deserve to be professional athletes. And it's really how we have structured sports around being so gendered. For example, if we had like different sports have professional athletes as, you know, pertaining to body type or body composition, that would be more fair instead of saying like, oh, you're male or you're female, you belong to this team or you belong to that team. You know,
I could see how there's a good argument for that too.
Yeah.
You're their body types. I like that idea too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the extent of what I can speak to.
That's fine, dude. We ain't gotta go into that too. Yeah. But you know, I guess to segue to, you know, because you know you had did some digging on me going into this.
Yeah.
And you know, rightfully so. And I know you had saw, you know, all the clips circulating about me. Let me ask you how that made you feel when you first saw them. Oh,
so when we first got the request to be on the podcast, I was like, hell yeah, I want to be on a podcast with you. Because this is like a big thing. And, you know, to talk about the things that we do in the LGBT world, but then to dig up and find that the statements that you've made, you know, and some of it was years ago. And I've come to know, and as I've listened to more of your podcast, I don't think that you're transphobic or homophobic. You just make some stupid comments,
and I'll drink to that.
You know, I don't really agree with cancel culture either, because cancel culture just really writes off people. It doesn't give people the grace to really learn about the things that they have said or done wrong until after the fact of being canceled. And, you know, that's very unfortunate because it's very, like, it really threatens and destroys careers. And the way that I think about learning about diversity and inclusion topics is that it does take time. Yeah. It does take mental capacity, and it does take a lot of grace and learning opportunities to fully envision and embody a mindset that is diverse and inclusive. You know.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I appreciate, like, again, like you seeing all that stuff. Today you could have told me to go fuck myself. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like easily enough. But I do appreciate you saying that stuff about me. I definitely say dumb shit, and I try not to.
Yeah.
And one thing I have learned is just punch up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Punch up with all that. But you know, like I said, I just appreciate you, like, you know, looking into it and coming to that conclusion. Because I remember when you told me yesterday you didn't think I was homophobic or transphobic. Like, that really did mean a lot. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I've been wanting to talk about this stuff, you know, what it's like going through it. You know, you're like, you say you don't believe in cancel culture. I was going through it a bit. Yeah. And I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want to seem like a victim, because I'm not. But I, you know, that stuff affects me. You know what I'm saying? Right. It definitely affects everybody.
Right. You know, words have a lot of weight to it. And when you have a big following, it's not just you saying it. Mm-hmm. You're also influencing other people to think that, oh, he said it or they said it. It makes it okay for me to say it too. So it's not just you. It's kind of like a ripple effect too. And, you know, and I don't want to seem catastrophic, but people are dying because of simple words or simple statements that actually are bigger than they are. You know, trans people are still dying, and Asian people faced a lot of hate during the pandemic. I know that I've dug up a clip when you said about sitting next to an Asian person on a plane during the pandemic. And I was thinking, you know what, during that time, during the pandemic, I wore a mask, but I was also very terrified to go outside.
Yeah.
Because I am an Asian person. And, you know, if I didn't wear a mask or a cap, I was very susceptible. What is the term?
Susceptible?
That's it.
Yep.
Damn it, I'm so smart.
that word
Okay.
to being hated on for being Asian. It's a lot of people thought that the coronavirus is because of Asian people, just because it originated from China, which a lot of people think that the Asian culture and Asian people are monolithic, when we're not. We're a very wide demographic and very diverse culture of different people too. So words hold a lot of weight.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of, I don't want to say, I looked up a brief statistic earlier. A lot of older Asian people, like elders, were experienced some kind of hate crime or some kind of hate speech onto them, and due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that clip you saw, whenever, I completely forgot about that. It was like a while back when I saw it. I was like, oh, that's ignorant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As a bad joke, I do bad jokes all the time. I promise. Like, I probably will do a bad joke again, but I'm going to make sure those jokes are punching up. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was like a big learning curve, like a big learning lesson. Like, yeah, it does the words do hold a lot of weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. That's not true anymore.
Well, I'm glad that you do recognize some of the stuff that you said was pretty oppressive. Not pretty oppressive. It was oppressive.
Yeah.
And your words have a lot of weight to it because you have a lot of fans and a lot of listeners. And it's not okay for other people to think that, oh, I can do that too.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I like to think that, me 3 years ago or 4 years ago is not the same as me now. I'm not the same person, but we all have growth and a lot of learning curves and a lot of learning opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, I can attest to that, dude. Even me just 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Learned so much since then.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Let me ask you this going on this for a second. Cause I've never I want to know how you feel about people tiptoeing, let me backtrack. So before all this stuff happened to me, I didn't treat anybody different, right? Like some of the things I would say in front of Kyle would be stuff I'd say in front of you. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't feel any different about it, right? But whenever that happened to me, it definitely gave me a lot of anxiety, right? To where okay, now I'm noticing if there is an Asian person in the room, what are they thinking of me? Or if there is a trans person in the room, what are they thinking of me? And I'm tiptoeing around what I say and making sure that they do feel comfortable, which and in a way would go into affirming, but in a way I feel like that's a wrong way to go about it. Cause before I felt, like I said, it didn't feel it didn't seem like, oh, there's an Asian person. It was just there's a whole lot of motherfuckers in this motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't I never had that thought of maybe tiptoeing around what I say because I don't want to offend somebody. And like I said, part of me feels like that's a weird way of looking at it just because, like I said, I didn't think of it as somebody else was in the room. There's a lot of people in the room. Have you had any type of experience like that? And how does that type of mindset make you feel? Is even me just talking about it weird?
Let me clarify.
Okay.
So you're talking about tiptoeing as in being PC around a diverse room of people.
Maybe, so yeah, that as well. Making sure I act correct. Don't make a fool of myself or just go out the way to make sure that they feel comfortable, right? When's I don't know if I would have did that prior. I would have just continued with my day and treated everybody exactly the same. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
I guess I just have I've had a lot more anxiety than ever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think being politically correct is a hard feat because it does take a lot of learning to do. However, how do I word this? However, I don't think you need to worry about being politically correct if you are already and confident that you're an affirming and inclusive person. Now, a lot of the things that we say definitely has a lot of weight to it. And, a lot of things that we say and believe are learned behaviors over time. We surround ourselves in groups of people who make it seem okay to say certain things. And I think it's really I know that I am an affirming person to be around. And I don't want to say it's a personality trait, but it's a life that I practice, mainly because of the world I live in. And I understand the tiptoeing thing because when I first entered the LGBT world, it was definitely a big learning curve for me, where I'm like, I'm unsure how to be an embodying person for people around me. So it takes a lot of work to be that kind of person, And I do understand that tiptoeing. It's very hard to be anxious around a diverse group of people and be like, I don't want to say something and be offensive when I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Now that I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it takes a lot of work to be that kind of person. But I definitely get that, where the tiptoeing process, and sometimes it does take that tiptoeing phase to get to the point of like, yes, I am fully a respectful person. I guess the end goal is I can be in any space and I feel confident in the things that I say. I don't have to think about the things I say can be offensive because I know that I'm not an offensive person. I know that what the terminology is that would be considered transphobic or racist or homophobic, I hope I'm saying this right.
No, and I hear you, and I think I might have worded it wrong too, because like I'm not like worried about, am I going to say something like transphobic or racist? Because that's not, I don't just say stuff like that. I mean, there's clips out there that would argue differently, but I have always thought, and I still feel that I am pretty good about that in any scenario, and feeling comfortable around any group of people. I always have. And it might just be like the anxiety of what transpired with me, where it's just like, oh, do those people over there hate me? You know what I mean? Now I'm like, should I go over there? And it's just, maybe it's just me being in my head. You know what I mean? I just didn't know if you've had like any experience with like maybe somebody acting differently whenever, you or your friends are around, and it makes y'all uncomfortable because they're trying to be accommodating. If that makes sense.
I don't think how do I say this? I don't want people to accommodate me because I am a non-binary person of color. I want people to already accept me for who I am. I want to say that's the end goal of the people I surround myself with. But I do sometimes feel as though, did I say this the wrong way? Did I say this in a way that somebody might perceive it in a very negative way? And I would try to be very open and honest and be like, hey, did the thing I say, was it offensive? And if it was, I'm so sorry.
That might be where I'm at now. Maybe I'm just thinking about it like what I say a little bit more, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But maybe that's what it is. Just me like, checking myself and overthinking stuff. That's why I don't smoke weed. I just overthink everything. But I couldn't even imagine being a stoner and questioning everything. I just wouldn't stop.
It's a learning process. It's a big learning curve to be inclusive.
Yeah.
You know, because our words are so nuanced, and I really hope that my last statement, what I was contemplating about, I hope it's not like turned into a negative way, but
I didn't think it was.
I don't know. I definitely question myself sometimes about the things that I say, because we are in a world that is ever evolving into like, oh, that statement is nuanced in a way where it can be negative, you know, and sometimes it does shut me up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'm just like, maybe I need to stay silent for a long time until I'm confident that I am very LGBT affirming, that I'm not racist, and that the words that I say are confidently inclusive of people. So I definitely get what you're talking about like tiptoeing with words and statements and whatnot. But if you're not sure, I would go up to the individual or individuals and be like, hey, was I offensive? And if I was, please let me know. Not saying that you have to teach me about, you know, how to be anti-racist or like not transphobic, because that's not somebody's responsibility to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
But it means a lot if you're trying to be like, hey, I really do want to fix myself.
Yeah. And it's, you know, there's nothing wrong with the helping hand. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, anybody can be a teacher. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just a school. Anybody can take a time and try to help. They don't have to, like you said, but it does go a long way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even today, you're being a teacher. You didn't have to be here, and it goes a long way. And it means a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, from marginalized communities, it's not the responsibility of, you know, a Black individual teaching you to not be a racist person.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's not the responsibility of an LGBT person to teach you to not be homophobic or transphobic.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's like a little bit of a double-edged sword to be like, oh, I'm kind of alone and I got to learn all of this by myself, you know, but it's truly not on the oppressed to teach the oppressor to not be oppressive. So,
but then you have that loving hand. You know what I mean?
A little bit. I take it with a lot. I'm very grateful for when that happens for me.
Yeah, you come at it with arms wide open.
Arms wide open.
Little Creed.
Under the sunlight.
Nah, but no, that's all like great points. You know what I mean? And like I said, I do appreciate you being here and talking about this stuff with me. I don't know, were you uncomfortable and nervous coming into this today or whenever you learned, you know, about me more?
Not about you. I was not nervous about you. I'm definitely nervous about the things that I say and could be turned around in a negative way. I think you could feel or empathize in that.
Absolutely.
Because I do work at a nonprofit organization that, you know, organizes Denver Pride. And a lot of people can take the words that you say in a wrong way and twist it, and that's not what you mean. You know, that's what I'm nervous about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that we can relate on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I'm glad you ain't nervous around me, man. I was going to say, Kyle, did you have anything you wanted to ask Viet?
Yeah, I actually wrote one down to mid-conversation. Let me pull this up here. I have two, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First, what moment in your life was hardest on you, and how did that shape you into the person that you are today?
Oh, gosh. I had like a terrible and very traumatic relationship about like 2 years ago. And I think that was the most shaping of who I am today.
You obviously don't have to talk about anything you're not comfortable with, you know.
Of course. That was definitely, that relationship was, because I was much younger than this individual. And we were in a relationship where it cannot be public. because I was, that relationship could not be public. And it was very traumatic for me, where I had to learn a lot about my own feelings and how I react emotionally, and just overcoming a lot of trauma that I faced during then. And after we broke up, I actually felt a lot better, because it was such a toxic relationship.
Isn't it crazy how whenever like it's toxic, like it's not good for you, but you're still in it. I've been there. And then as soon as you get out, you're like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
It's just like the biggest weight lifted off your shoulders. Like, I can be me now.
It's the human brain is very interesting. Human behavior is very interesting. But yeah, it came to a point where I was like, I cannot have you in my life any longer. And it was like cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably one of the best things that have ever happened. Now the other thing that has, like, I want to say deeply shaped me into who I am is, before our podcast, we had a pre-meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that, like, I can get very vulnerable in this podcast. And I was like, I faced quite a few homophobic things. I don't want to say it's hate crimes. I'm not sure what amounts to a hate crime. But, as a queer person, when I lived in Lubbock, I would hold hands with my ex-partners and would walk down University Avenue, and like a lot of people would blow smoke out of their mufflers of their truck at us. That's what would happen too. And, I've organized protests in Lubbock. I've also been spat on by homophobic people. And yeah,
that hurts, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
It's difficult. It's very enraging for me in the moment. And that spitting moment, it didn't really happen in Texas either. It happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And, I almost got into a fight, but I had to reel myself back and was like, what good would come from that if I really just beat the crap out of this person? Nothing would.
Yeah. That's just that dog in you.
A little bit. But I think, hate people. Let me backtrack. Not hate people. What is that term?
Hurt people.
Hurt people. That's right. I think the individual who spat on me, they were just in a place, or they were just very unhappy. But yeah, it was, and they called me. I've been called the F word many times before. It's really those moments of oppression for me that really shaped me into bouncing back into a much stronger person. I mentioned I was in student government at Texas Tech. When I started student government, I wore a suit and tie, and the rules for being in student government was that women need to wear like dress and blouse and like pantsuits, and men need to wear suit and ties. It's very binary in that sense. So after a few times that I showed up in a suit and tie, this one person stood up in front of like the whole student senate, which was, I don't know, like 40, 50 people. It was like, only women can wear this and only men can wear that. If you're not wearing that, you're out of dress code. And they shot me a look, and I was like, oh, you're talking about me.
Ooh. So how'd the room feel? Did the room get real sour after that?
Oh yeah. I felt bitter. It was very silent. It was an awkward silence in there, and everyone knew that they were talking at me too, because I was the only like gender expressive queer person there. I was the only like female person wearing a suit and tie. And I was like, oh no, fuck that. And so I worked with a few people to get our Senate rules changed to, this is what professional dressing what professional dress looks like, and this is what we can wear, and what constitutes as unprofessional. So it's very much not binary anymore. I don't know if the Student Senate or like the SGA rules have changed at all, but that was one of the moments that I was like, oh no, fuck that. We're going to make some changes here.
Yeah, and that's a fucking stupid thing to say anyway, just because pretty much everyone looks dope in a suit and tie.
Right?
Yeah. Everyone looking clean, you know what I mean?
I was also down with like the floral ties too. And like a lot of the men there, a lot of the men in the Student Senate I was in, they wore just single colored ties, and it was not, and I want to say a lot of men still embody toxic masculinity, so floral ties were not it. So I was digging into it.
Wait, are color ties toxic?
No, I don't think so. Well, I don't think anything is like toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is when men think these are the attributes that make you a man.
Yeah.
And we can go on, but it's a whole topic that you can go into of like how this affects men, how this affects society and such. But I want to say I was the only one wearing floral ties. So.
I know, like my stepdad, not going to kind of attest to this, like not like a test, but like a little, like, I won't say pushback, but like my stepdad, whenever I was younger, I'm very thankful for my stepdad because he taught me what it means to be a man. And it's not like your typical things like, oh, build a fire, drive a truck or shit like that. It's like, being a gentleman, providing for your family, working really hard. You know what I mean? Like, that's my idea of like being a man is like, my stepdad, it's not my biological father. He's always been there for me, like my biological father. And I'm not saying biological father. I love my real dad very, very much. He's a great man, but it's just like my stepdad still, in his mind, to be a man, I'm going to take this kid and raise him as my own too.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's toxic.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all. Like, I think it's very healthy to adopt children that are not related to you by blood.
Mm-hmm. He didn't adopt me, but
I have the definition.
In his heart, he adopted me. All right, go ahead, Kyle.
I have the definition here, which is the opposite of everything you said, Mitch. So you're good on that. Okay. Toxic masculinity refers to the notion that some people's idea of manliness perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression. Toxic masculinity involves cultural pressures for all men to behave a certain way, and it likely affects all boys and men in some fashion. Damn. So all these things, domination, homophobia, and aggression, like that is toxic masculinity. But taking care of your family, opening the door for somebody to, show respect and stuff like that is not toxic. It's trying to be a good person.
All right, let me ask you this then. If you're just one of those things out of all of them, is that toxic masculinity? Because like, what if my girlfriend's very dominant? Is she toxic masculinity?
Depends on if you like it.
I'm sorry about that, dude. That was silly. Dude, I didn't know like homophobia was in there with toxic masculinity.
Yeah, homophobia is definitely in there. Like I think what toxic masculinity embodies and what defines what a man should be goes against gay men who act feminine, like in a feminine sense.
Got you.
So a lot of bullying, a lot of hatred, a lot of homophobia can stem from that.
Well, then hearing all this is definitely making me even more thankful for my stepdad of how he really taught me what it means to be a man. You know what I mean? Like that, I don't know. I like that idea a lot more, what he taught.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hate to hear that story. Like I can relate to, some of your traumatic stuff on a little bit of a scale. It's not the same, but like, I'm from Mississippi and a lot of parts in Mississippi are pretty racist. And I was in high school. I was seeing a black gal for a while. We were seeing each other for a while, and I remember we were at the mall, just like walking around holding hands, and just like the looks that we got at this mall downtown, where it was just like that was the first time I experienced that. Where I was just like, "Yo, what the fuck?" And then I remember I was in the Pride Parade in Jackson. It was the first one. There was a lot of people protesting, and like there was just these people just mad as hell. And I just grabbed my dude buddy and we just started making out right in front of him, dude. Just like fight hate with love, It's like, you were saying like hurt on hurt or whatever that saying was.
Hurt people.
Hurt people. A lot of times you can't fight hate with hate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that a lot. You know what I mean? You can't fight hate with hate. You gotta, I don't know. That's why I think like sitting down and talking. That's why I love doing the podcast too, sitting down and talking.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's that's great progress.
Sometimes, I've thought about like, the world would be so much better if we just talked it out. And, part of me still believes that. And the other part of me is like, do I really have the capacity to sit down with a conservative, really homophobic, transphobic person and try to get them to accept me? I'm just like, no, you can do what you want. I'm just still going to live my life.
I will say that a lot of those people can change though. Yeah. So like my dad, he grew up homophobic, was homophobic for a long time. I remember a couple years ago, this was actually not a couple, it was a bunch of years ago. My sister was seeing a girl and I was DJing at the gay bar. And, at first this is all super shocking to my dad, and he moved down to Mississippi and went to a place where he was around a bunch of gay people because we didn't have a lot where he lived wasn't anything like that. He ended up being friends with them and learned there were people just like him. And then I remember I went to go visit him one time and it was like, I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. One day he just told me, he's like, son, if you're gay, I'll still love you.
Aww.
And I was like, damn, man. Damn, that's change right there. Yeah. I was so proud of him. I'm still proud of him for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of people can definitely change. And it definitely goes back to when we said that, it's not really the responsibility of the oppressed to teach the oppressor.
Yeah.
But people are capable of changing. And, my parents, for example, when I first came out to them as like being gay, they were like, we still love you, but we don't support what you do. We don't support, being gay. That's just not something we believe in.
Yeah.
And over time, I think what really was the catalyst is when our relationship between me and my parents got really rocky and like I stopped talking to them for about 2 to 3 years and they were like, oh shit, we're going to lose one of our kids.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of the turning points for them. And now they go to LGBT events and I want to say they've been to a lesbian pride at one point and was like, hey, look, we went to this lesbian pride. See, we're really good people.
Look at them trying, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's all in the process, of course.
That's great, man. I love that. And Kyle, I want to answer your question too. Can you say it one more time? What is the most traumatic experience and how did it shape me?
Yeah, not traumatic necessarily. What moment in your life was hardest on you and how did that shape you into the person you are today?
I'm going to be honest, and I hate to like bring it back to that, but like what I have gone through the last 2.5 months has probably been the hardest thing I've ever gone through as an adult. You know what I mean? And, and then like I said, I didn't want to talk about a lot of stuff because like I said, I didn't want to seem like a victim and stuff, but like I still am a person that feels this. And, I was getting people like death threats. Oof. I had some people tell me to kill myself and you know what I mean? And luckily I'm a strong person. I don't want to do that, but there's only so many times you can be told that you're ugly until you think, hey, maybe I'm ugly. You know what I'm saying? And, God, for a second, I was like, just down. Luckily, like I said, I got a great support system with people that truly love me, friends and family. And, now I've started trying to use it as like a chip on my shoulder. That was a question I was going to ask you. It was like all these people like being hateful for you. Did you ever like take that and to use it as like a chip on your shoulder? Be like, yeah, you don't like that? Well, watch this, dude. Have you ever used, I've always tried to do that with any time in my life. Like whenever like someone was like, your music sucks, dude. Like you're not funny or like any time in my whole career where I'm like, or like, oh, Taboo sucks. I'm like, yeah, just keep saying that, man. Watch, I'm going to fucking get really good at this and you're going to feel really dumb. I'd like that. I don't know. I've always tried. And this was like the first time ever where like people saying negative things wasn't going as a chip on my shoulder. It was just getting me down. And like I said, I've now turned that into like motivation, to not only be better, but show and to help. You know what I mean? But like every time in my life that anybody has ever doubted me, I've used it as a chip on my shoulder to bring out that dog in me. You ever had that? Do you ever try to do that? I feel like it's a very healthy thing to do.
I think it's situational.
Yeah.
I think when you said that you really bounced back when people said, oh, your music sucks.
Yeah.
That is very positive and very healthy because like, oh yeah, I'm going to show you my talent. That is really positive. But I want to go back to like these past 2.5 months you said?
Yeah.
Of like people like trying to cancel you and whatnot. You know, I think it's more meaningful if recognizing the situation and that, you know, maybe the statements I said were very offensive. And then turning back, and this is the moment where you're trying to turn back and be like, I'm really having this conversation with an individual from an LGBT nonprofit to learn more and to be better in how I communicate and the things that I say. You know, I think that's very meaningful too. So it's not like, oh, I'm gonna show you that I'm better than you, whatever.
That's not what I was saying with it though. Like your mindset, like how you worded it was literally how it was. Cause at first I was just, like I said, down. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, hey, you know, look at me. That was never the point of all this. It took me up second. It took me a while to get to the point where I could reflect until I could listen and say, yo, this is where I went wrong. Yeah, I did have a fuck up. I shouldn't be punching down. It took a second to get to that point. Yeah. You know what I mean? That wasn't like after like a week, like it really, until about like, I think maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and just had like the, you know, maybe I should sit and listen for a second. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then now once I did have that realization, now it's changed the mindset where it's just like, yo, like, let me, like, it's like whenever people like, you know, like you're hateful and it's like, I swear to God, I'm not. And I'm going to do everything in my power to prove that to y'all and to show you that I'm not. You know what I mean? Is that the wrong mindset to have?
I don't think that's the wrong mindset. I don't think that's a wrong mindset at all. I think some people might perceive it as like, oh, he's on the verge of being canceled. He's trying to backtrack. Which may be the narrative, but I think it means a lot that you invited me here to talk in depth or to the depth that it can be about the LGBTQ community and like my experiences as a queer person of color. You know, I think that matters a lot. And it's different from being told that, oh, your music sucks and I'm going to do better because my music's awesome.
Definitely not the same thing. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I
will say just personally too, after all of that happened, because Mitch is he's a really positive, bubbly guy, you know, he usually lets things bounce off of him and stuff. But when all of that was happening, I would come over and he was different for sure. He was really in his head, really just kind of, you know, not up and bubbly and just kind of, you could just tell it was on his mind. And it wasn't until he told me like, hey, we're going to do this podcast with you. It wasn't until then that I started seeing the life come back, you know, just him being like, yeah, like, this is it. Like, I get to talk to this person. We can work this out. Like, I really want to know where I went wrong. Like what he's trying to figure out what he is doing that is causing all of this pressure and really trying to, you know, make a change. It was never like, oh, you know, anger or anything like that. It was really him being in his mind and being like, what am I doing? Like, what can I do to change and make this better?
I appreciate that, Kyle. Like I said, I blame nobody but myself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to be better.
That's good. That's those statements have a lot of weight to it too. And I hope that the people who listen to your podcasts really hear that and really hear where you're coming from, that you're trying to learn and you're trying to be better and learning about the words that are offensive, the words that hold a lot of weight, you know? Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Good question, Kyle. He always has the best ones. He did say he had another.
Yeah, I do have another one. This one maybe not so much for Mitch.
Whatever, dude.
So I can, you know what?
Nah, dude, fuck me, dude.
No, I got this. So, what advice would you give a young person who is struggling with self-identity in today's society? And what could somebody who is not struggling with identity, or let's say a straight person, what could they do to help as well?
Well, let me answer the second part of the question. For an individual who is not struggling with their identity, finding ways to support the community, to support organizations that do that footwork, and practicing, using pronouns. I want to say that's the 101 of practicing using pronouns, practicing not making assumptions of people. I keep spitting.
Just keep going, dude.
Making assumptions of people, and don't make assumptions of where people may have come from. Can you repeat your question again?
The first part, maybe.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give a young person who is struggling with self-identity in today's society?
That's hard, because that would also be assuming that people have the access to organizations like the center. Sometimes young people are still living with their parents, and they can't be out, or they can't go to a certain place. And I guess the internet is a big place that you can get entrenched into. Find communities on Discord, maybe. And if your local nonprofit organization, community center, has online resources, definitely tap into that. For example, at my program, we have a Discord server, and they might be able to hide that from unsupportive family members or people they're living with. But I guess I want to hone in on something positive, huh? A person struggling with their identity, I guess the positive thing to say is that it's okay for your identity to fluctuate and eventually solidify. Because you can identify, it's okay to identify as one thing and later on identify as something else. For example, I identified as a lesbian at one point, and I fluctuated between identifying as bi then a lesbian because of social pressures. And then now I'm like, oh, I can be attracted to many other people instead of just women. So it's just be okay with fluctuating, attraction. Yeah, go with the flow.
I kind of want to answer that first part and not relate it to gender, but relate it to a self-ideology, because there's a lot of that in the music industry, and for young artists out there trying to figure out who they are in this space and what they are. And I've given this advice many times, and it's so basic, but it's so fucking true. It's just literally be yourself. You know what I mean? There's a million people out there, but there's only one you. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And it's be you. Everybody is different, and you're beautiful. It's silly. It's silly, but it's the most true thing, because everybody's out there, but there's only one you.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Let's get to these fan questions.
So, yes, I do have a topic for you, Mr. TVBOO. This is Mr. Andrew Davis from Alabama. We met at Soul Fest.
What up, Andrew?
Back at this year, but I have a question. So, being as I'm a gay man myself, and you're going to be talking with these people from your nonprofit, what is the biggest hurdles as, gay people that we are trying to get through at this point? For me, is marriage a big deal? For me, it's not so much, but is marriage a big deal? Having all of your rights? That's my question. Thanks, TVBOO.
Thank you, man. Biggest hurdle for gays that you're seeing?
For the queer community, it's multifaceted. It also really depends on where you live. I think he said Alabama.
He did. And you could tell it from the voice too.
That's a place I don't want to live in.
I got a lot of family from Alabama, dude.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good people out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly the political landscape where I don't want to be.
Gotcha.
But it's multifaceted. Like I said, trans people are having their trans rights attacked on, taken away, threatened, and that can very much lead to, the status of affecting queer marriage, and also depending on the community that you live in. You may not be able to have access to other queer identifying people, and like loneliness is a big thing. And I know that during the pandemic, queer loneliness was intensifying because you don't have access to like go to LGBT centers or community groups. And then online groups are so limited, and like, queer loneliness is a big thing. Aside from trans rights, marriage, gay marriage potentially being attacked on, and the mental health crisis that pursues after that, it's a lot that can be threatened and taken away. Also our youth are having, there's so much controversy surrounding like trans youth, that can take a toll on our younger generation. So a lot of things are very big and threatening at the moment. So
can't really pick one because it's not fair. There's a lot of problems to work on. You got to work on all of them, and picking one is not as helpful.
Right. And also the LGBTQ community and the acronym, it's like beyond the LGBTQ plus. The plus sign is very limiting. It's so much more. The plus is just a plus sign.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, dude. When you add plus, it can be infinite after that.
A little bit.
Yeah. Like 2 plus what?
Yeah.
Use your imagination.
Well, LGBTQI2 plus, the acronym can go on actually, and I don't want to be offensive and say something misleading.
I'm saying it can go infinite, man.
Yeah.
All right, nice, dude. I can't comment on that one, but
yeah, comment on that one. I don't want to hear it.
Let's get to this last one.
You got it.
All right, couple questions. So, what sort of EDM events can we expect from the LGBTQ communities in that Colorado area? Also, another question for TVBOO. Long time ago, you had that like Banana Boat remix. Day-o. Where has that track been? I've maybe heard it dropped once in like a 30-second video, and it's never resurfaced. Do you ever plan on dropping that track again? Yeah, let me know. Please and thank you.
Could I start with this one? That song can never be released due to copyright issues. So you can only ever hear it at shows, and you will hear it maybe once or twice a year.
Not even on SoundCloud?
Nope, can't do it. Now, in that first part, I was, I don't know if you guys have any like dance music events planned. I'm thinking we should do one.
We can do one, actually. Yeah. I am very ambitious in the things that I do in my field of work, so I'm down to explore that. But I don't know. I'm not in the EDM scene, so I can't really say I know any LGBT-specific EDM concert music scenes or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that our community is saturated in those scenes as well.
So. Oh, yeah. They're everywhere, man, and they're the fucking best.
Yeah.
God.
They're so happy.
Oh my God.
Every time I go to a show, it's always the gay men, gay women, trans. They're always the happiest people there. And I feel like it's because, with the acceptance in the scene and stuff, I feel like they're at a show and they're like, yes, I get to be me here. Yeah. And you can just see it on their face.
So much fun.
But sometimes like just being happy without, people honing down on who you are is sometimes all that it matters.
It's the little things.
Like I talk a lot with my members about, in the ideal world, you don't need to come out. You're just fully accepted as who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter the fluctuations in identity, you don't have to come out. that's the ideal world. That's
Yeah.
all I gotta say.
Yeah. I think my parents learned that I was bi from watching this podcast.
That's something you need to.
No,
you need to accept.
my mom's very progressive, dude. She's
Okay.
chill. I know she's listening to this right now. Hey, Mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we should do something.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you said you haven't been in that world. I'm gonna have you out to a show, let you experience it, see how you feel. You can bring your whole all your members, have a good time.
Sure.
Yeah.
I definitely know some members who would be down to be in that scene.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have you all out.
Yeah.
Well, fuck yeah, this has been awesome.
Cool. This was a wonderful time for me. You know, even with all the anxiety and whatnot, like this was a wonderful time.
No, and I appreciate you too. Like, you know, I'm just very appreciative. You know, this has been really nice. You know, I definitely have learned a lot, and it's just nice hearing a different perspective on a lot of things. You know what I mean? And like I said, I really appreciate you coming here today.
Yeah. Thank you so much. There's always room to learn more.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna keep in touch. Like I said, I'm gonna have you out to a show, show you a good time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else you want the people to know before you get out of here? Where can people go donate? Anything that people should know before you get out of here?
Whew. Well, you can definitely donate to the Center on Colfax. Your money will go towards programmatic things that will go back into the community. If you tell our front desk people that you want to donate to a certain program at the center, they'll make it happen. But I also want to boost our other nonprofits too. You know, Youth Scene is another LGBT organization that focuses on youth who are also POC. And One Colorado, of course. One Colorado is pretty awesome. They do a lot of political footwork and like legislative footwork, and also in the schools. You know, yeah. I know that our upcoming the Femme Underground concert in March 2024, we want to make a benefit towards Undestructible. They're a local nonprofit that supports survivors of violence and trying to get, you know, victims back on their feet. So if you want to donate to any of the other organizations, please do.
Fuck yeah. And I'm going to post y'all's link in the description for everything too.
Of course.
Fuck yeah.
That would be lgbtqcolorado.org.
Awesome.
There we go. Anything else you want the people to know?
Not really, unless they want to know more.
Well, then they should have called.
That's true. That's true.
But fuck yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
For real. Thank you. It meant a lot. And thank you for being here for real.
Yeah. No
Fuck
problem
yeah.
at all.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle.
Yes, sir.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everybody, listening to this week's episode of Talks with Taboo. I will see y'all next week. Peace.